as we kick off this conversation, I wanted you to think back to January 20th. You've been in office a long time, and certainly nothing like the last 4 years, I'm sure, had ever been encountered in your career. But as you saw President Biden being inaugurated, what were your feelings on that day? What were you thinking as you thought about the future and what this might mean?
Well, first of all, I really actually found myself able to breathe differently. I was able to exhale and inhale and smile and just chill, just calm down. I was watching my watch to see that it was noon, because I knew that any minute before noon, who knew what Donald Trump might do? But once we passed that, and then I heard this calm, easy to listen to speech about bringing everyone together, about representing all Americans, I felt so much better than I had, and hadn't even realized, I think, how much tension there was over the last 4 years. And we're talking about women, just the disrespect in a personal and in a policy way for women. And then, of course, saw Kamala Harris sworn in. So it was really an amazingly wonderful day.
And of course, the administration jumped right in and got to work. There are a lot of pressing issues, a lot of pressing demands in front of this administration. As you think about everything that President Biden has to confront and address, what would you say to him to make him prioritize reproductive rights issues?
Well, as a longtime leader of the pro-choice movement and in Congress, and well before, actually even before Roe v. Wade, because I go back a very long way, and do remember friends who really had to seek unsafe abortions. And in Chicago, a group created a kind of an underground organization called Jane. So I've been around this issue forever, and it's so fundamental. So I was happy to see that early on, I don't know if it was in the first tranche of the executive orders or the second, ending the global gag rule, which goes back and forth with Republican and Democratic administrations, and saying that yes, foreign policy assistance should go to countries that offer abortion, recommendations about it, full-scale reproductive health, because reproductive health is healthcare. That's what it is. And so we shouldn't limit it. So I was very pleased with that initial move on his part, and of course would like to see more and hope to see more. As you said, it's less than 100 days. So not that I'm patient. I'm really not a patient person, but the sooner the better. He has made sure that he's going to address women's issues. He set up an office, what do you call it, in the White House to do just that. So I'm happy about it.
Well, I know you're not a patient person, because last summer you introduced the first legislation aimed at repealing the Helms Amendment. And then I saw that you reintroduced it last month. So you are clearly trying to get this moving. Talk to me about why the repeal of the Helms Amendment is so important.
First, I have to admit to you that while, of course, I've heard of Hyde, I had heard of the global gag rule to help women around the world, I really hadn't heard much about the Helms Amendment. That was an amendment that was offered right about the same time as Roe v. Wade by Jesse Helms, of course, a known racist. And there are racist issues along with this, because what it said is that no government around the world could get any assistance for reproductive health. Initially, it said that would use abortion for birth control, but it has been taken to mean pretty much anything. And of course, as you know, even with their own money, organizations were not able to accept US aid. But the reason I say racism is who's affected by this? These are mainly countries that are low income. That's why they need the help. That are people of color, women, and so he wanted to make sure that um, what Donald Trump called the shithole countries, excuse me, would not get the help that they need for the women who many times just don't want to bring another child into poverty, who want to take care of their family, who may want to start an enterprise to raise a little money, to control their lives. This is a fundamental right, maybe the first right that women need to control our own bodies and plan our own families. So I'm determined to get rid of this Helms Amendment and would really like to see that in the president's next budget, there is no Helms Amendment funding.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, Senator Helms had introduced that, in reaction to Roe v. Wade becoming the law of the land. And here we are almost 50 years later, still dealing with the repercussions of that. So thank you for explaining why the Helms Amendment is so important, because I think so often when we're in this space, we assume that folks know all of these things, but there has been so many pieces of legislation, so many barriers erected to access that it's hard sometimes even to keep track.
I know sometimes we just have to really concentrate on the statewide, they're horrible, limiting, oh no, they're not repealing Roe v. Wade, they're just making it impossible for women to get an abortion.
Yeah.
An abortion, right?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about what's happening in the states, because the Guttmacher Institute just came out with a study that found that even though abortion is legal in the United States under Roe, 6 out of 10 women who would be wanting to have access to abortion care can't access it in the place that they live. So it comes back to this idea that what does it matter if something is legal if you can't actually use the services? Is there something the administration can do about this?
Yes, and they have actually talked about changing the Trump rules on Title X. Which, because the rules about who and where you could provide an abortion were so exclusionary that Planned Parenthood actually decided not to even participate in the United States' #1 funding source for abortion services. Because it was just impossible to set up a whole separate clinic, and they just made it so difficult. And that, of course, was the intention. And especially aimed at Planned Parenthood, who deals with so many women and men, by the way, for basic health care services. And so, I'm anxious to see what that looks like. The getting rid of those Title X restrictions, I think, will be a very big help.
Yeah. You mentioned, you were really encouraged to see the administration move so quickly to repeal the global gag rule. Are there other signs or indicators of steps? You also mentioned the Office on Gender Issues that the president has established. Anything else you want to call out that you feel folks who care about these issues should be encouraged by?
Well, then I would say that the sooner the better. Changing the Title X, as we were just talking about, is so very important. That has really been a terrible limiter of access. And so all the things that are just put in place for no other reason. This has nothing to do with protecting women's health. It has nothing to do with anybody's health. This is just because they hate the abortion issue at all, and that they want to get rid of everything. And we need to move on these things at the state level too, because the Supreme Court, which hopefully will be changed before too long, is not with us on these issues.
You've already said you're not a patient person, but I know that there may be some folks out there who would say, give the guy a break. He's repealed the global gag rule. He's got a lot in front of him. Maybe that's all we're going to get out of this administration. What would you say to folks like that? Maybe, be more patient. We got to wait. Yeah.
Well, I'm certainly willing to give the president more time, but I think the advocacy for change is so important. I am really, I consider myself a lifetime organizer. That's what I was before I did any public election stuff. But that it matters so much when the voices of ordinary people, and I wanted to tell you that when I got on board with repealing Hyde, it was young, fierce, mostly women of color who came and said, come on, we just have to stop this. And we are, in the next budget, not going to see the Hyde Amendment and funding for the Hyde Amendment. And it'll be a battle. It will be a battle. For some on the Republican side, this is their number one issue, to prevent abortions. So when we talk about timing, it's not just about when will the president decide, when even will the Congress decide. It is when the voice of people, women, and our friends, our male friends, get organized to say, no, this is the moment now for women to have full health care protection.
And you clearly see Hyde as key to that. Is that why it's becoming the battleground right now on these issues?
Oh, absolutely. And again, you know, we are looking through a different lens now. How racist this is, how antagonistic it is to low-income women, because you know, who would rely on public funding for abortion services? And it should be available. And when we get to healthcare, Medicare for all, that will be in there too, that abortion services, you know, we had to fight and contort and figure out how to do it in the Affordable Care Act and Obamacare to make sure that women's rights were protected. I want to tell you, Nancy Pelosi played a key role talking to the head of the bishops' organization on how important this was, and finally getting the support of nuns to be able to figure out a mechanism so women could, and it's not just about healthcare protection, which is the main thing, but it's about choice, literal choice. It is about independence. It is about ownership of our body. It is our right to me. And you know, if men needed abortions, believe you me, a long time ago, they would have been able to have them, to make decisions about their families.
Yeah, and what's interesting, something that's really struck us about the president is that even as he's taking all of these actions and saying the right things, he has yet to actually publicly say the word abortion. Why do you think that is? And what do you think it's going to take to get him to be comfortable talking about abortion? Because of course, if you can't even say the word, it does create a sense of stigma around it. Yeah.
I agree. I totally agree with that. I want to hear that word too. But you know, the right to choose, we've used that for years. Pro-choice. Now, we aren't necessarily pro-abortion. We are pro-choice, but and on the list of choices certainly has to be abortion. But there, for a long time in our culture, there has been an avoidance of the word. And so I agree, just as my friend Eve Ensler, who by the way changed her name to just plain Y.
Did she?
Tell me, I just talked to her. No last name, Y.
Amazing.
No, I'm sorry, V.
Oh, V for the Vagina Monologue, the play that, of course, she famously wrote. Yep.
So vagina, right? That, you know, that was an unspoken word as well. So I think it is important that we help people to say that this is a right. It is fully legal in the United States, not fully enough, but it's legal in the United States of America. And it is on the long list of healthcare services that need to be provided. And that's that. And so women are going to help, I think, a lot of people to say the word abortion who have not been accustomed or have talked around it and not just declared it as a right. with that
Yeah.
word.
Yeah. Do you think it's important for him to eventually get to say the word, or are you okay if he continues to use the pro-choice framing?
Well, I guess it depends on what he does.
Mm.
I mean, I'm looking
Actions
at
speak louder
results.
than words.
Yeah, I'm looking at results here.
Yeah.
And so it's, um, I think it, I think it might help him to, to propel him forward if he could say the word, embrace the idea and not just the and the word. But I'll take action
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a sense of how far he can be pushed on these issues? Again, going back to that inherent tension between how many demands are on and how much he's being asked to achieve. It's only 100 days in, and people are already saying, you're not moving fast enough. There's real urgency. Do you get a sense that at some point folks will need to step back a little bit, or do you think this is a
Here's
president ready to go? Yeah.
what we need. We need strategy. We need a plan.
Mm.
And that plan may have pieces to it. So what's the most important thing? And that's not just for me to decide or the pro-choice caucus in the House to decide, but it's for the advocates as well, and all of those who are so deeply involved in this issue to say, here's what we think is. So let me ask you, what do you think is the most important thing? I mean, I would, I mean, I'd like to see it all done at once. He has already started to speak about the Title X issue, so maybe that ought to be the immediate thing. Or we could have a list, but focus on, and we should have a list, but focus on where we mobilize people. Or others may say, no, we just have to go for the full package. And that's what we want to do, because some groups are more interested in domestic, some people are more interested in international, maybe we want one of each, but we need a plan. So we need to work together to get that.
Yeah. Certainly, President Trump left his mark in one significant way on the federal court system. President Biden, of course, has recently announced his first slate of nominees. It was an incredible, first, it was a large list, one of the largest we've seen in recent years. It was a very diverse list, lots of folks to cheer on that list. Talk to me about what you think his impact could and should be on shaping, some might say reshaping, the federal judiciary. When President Trump put more than 200 judges and created a conservative majority on the Supreme Court, I mean, that was a pretty significant, lasting legacy of his. What do you think President Biden's approach to this should be?
Well, first of all, I think it is important for him to fill as many vacancies as he can and continue in this path of very diverse women, men, people of color. And I do think we need to rebalance the court. And I think that we should not exclude the idea of adding members to the court. Now, the Republicans will say that this is, what is it called? Filling, what's the word?
Hacking the courts?
Hacking.
Yeah.
You know what? They are the original court packers by not allowing, with almost a year left to go, President Biden's nominee.
Obama's, yeah.
I meant,
Yeah.
Obama's nominee,
Yeah.
who is now so what is he?
Attorney General.
Attorney General. And hugely important for the judiciary. So they and then of course they just packed the court while the election was already underway. Their excuse was the people should decide when they were talking about Obama's nominee. And now the election, early voting had already begun when they were putting their choice. And she is completely anti-choice. She has a long record of really extremism on that issue. So I think that we have to take seriously the option, and it is an option, to rebalance the court with, because it is so skewed right now, with people of a different philosophy. I mean, we have 3 Trump justices on the Supreme Court. And you know, and the majority is against us on most of the, especially women's issues that we care about. So
Yeah.
anyway, I think that you know, we have to be bold and not timid about how we move forward on these incredible issues, because that is the court of last resort in the United States of America, and it's out of reach to too many people.
Yeah. So reflecting on the first 100 days of President Biden, if you had to grade him, what would you grade him? It sounds like you feel like he so far has been doing pretty well in terms of taking action, delivering against his promises. Is he in like the B+ level
Well,
for you?
here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to give him an incomplete right now. Uh,
Love it. But you have to explain.
Incomplete. You know, I say it with a smile. I'm not, you know, not pessimistic at all about it. But, you know, I said I'm not a patient person. So let's, you know, let's say an incomplete on you know, on some things. I mean, I think he has in some ways absolutely changed the culture. I think people now more believe that government can be their friend and can actually be the solution. I mean, I remember when even a Democratic president, you know, said the age of big government is over and we're going to make it smaller. That government can be a major force for good in your life. And I also think that it has changed the view that working people drive the economy, that it's not trickled down from the wealthiest, but that when we empower and help fund just ordinary people and set policies that help them live a really fulfilling life and take care of their families, that is the thing that our goal ought to be, not just to hope that the wealthy are going to somehow, which they never have, it's never worked. Think about the practically 99% of Americans. So I think that means that we're going to see more labor union activity, more concentration on helping, because we passed legislation to make it easier to organize. And so I'm really looking forward to a change of attitude in this country about the role of government and certainly when it comes to elections, we have to do that. We have to do that.
So speaking of elections, the midterms are in 2022. What would what would you need to see from him on these issues in order to move him from an incomplete to an actual grade?
Well, you know, I think what he has decided from the beginning, that it's not about messaging. You know, we had in this country an infrastructure week every other week with Donald Trump. He said, "Oh, this time it's infrastructure week. We're really going to." So he's not interested in the rhetoric as much as delivering. I think the decision in, you know, just shorter than you think for the midterm elections, they come around real fast, is that there have to be concrete victories that actually have helped people. And not just the checks, but the unemployment insurance, food assistance, helping to keep people in their homes so that they're not evicted. Of course, it has to do with really crushing the virus instead of mocking the virus, and that's still a challenge, a big challenge, because people want to get out, they want to be together. I get that. So I think delivering concrete victories for everyday people is the answer to the midterm elections. And, you know, I don't even understand the Republicans all voting no against the, not the Recovery Act, but just the, you know, saving people's lives. Now we're into recovery. But I think it's a bad vote. What are you going to do? Go home and say, the reason I voted against, sending you more checks and helping your children get back to school, I just thought it was too much money. They did $2 trillion for the richest Americans just a few years ago. So I really think we're in better shape than some of the pundits like to say, because the history of the midterm elections is that the party in power loses seats, and we have a very narrow margin, as you know, already.
Mhm.
But I think the Rescue Act has meant so much, and if we can go ahead now with this Jobs and Act and really put lots of people back to work in good paying jobs, it's going to make all the difference. And if we do something about the fairness of our democracy, and I think one of the things we all said on the floor was, this bill, we're talking about the Rescue Act, this bill is bipartisan. Republicans, Democrats, Independents, all the people out there support it. The only place it is not bipartisan is in the House of Representatives. And back to our main topic, this is not only a pro-choice Congress with some new members who are absolutely wonderful, progressives, tough, but it's a pro-choice nation. This nation is not for the policies that would really eliminate the access to abortion. They may have differences. We're fighting right now in Illinois to get rid of the lingering parental notification bill. And by the way, that's also to save lives, because even in good families, loving families, I remember years ago when this young woman who just didn't want to disappoint her parents, so she had an illegal abortion, and in her deathbed she wouldn't tell her mother what had happened, but she died. So we're trying to make life better, and especially for women and girls when it comes to reproductive health. So I think that we have to show that we are serious, that we're winners, that we're going to do everything. And I do think that this next bill is probably going to have to be done by reconciliation, a process that only asks for a majority.
50, right. I saw that just got approved, that process. So
yeah.
Yes, well, I was going to ask you for your final message to listeners, but that was a pretty good summation of both the challenges and the opportunities that lie ahead. And thank you for highlighting that most.
I can say one thing.
Yes, please do. Yes.
Organize, organize, organize. Don't wait for something to happen, because it won't if we aren't mobilized. And women, we can win these fights. When we fight, we win.